Hello and welcome once again to the Omega-3 Awareness Week. Today we're going to talk about the omega-3 and cardiovascular health, and we're going to talk with Dr. Seth Baum. Seth Baum, he's a well-known US cardiologist, especially in the field of preventive cardiology. He's also an entrepreneur. He founded Vital Remedy. It's one of the premium omega-3, or not only omega-3, the premium nutritional supplement companies. He founded Women's Preventive Cardiology. He founded a Excel Medical Trials Laboratory, and he's affiliate clinical professor of cardiology at the FAU Medical School. Seth, well, one thing which I forgot, I also consider you as a good friend. Thank you very much for having the time and joining us in this event.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and I consider you a good friend as well.
Thank you. Seth, I think I left out one thing. It is you're not only a cardiologist, you also interventional.
Yeah. So yes. So you know, my cardiology story is interesting, at least to me. I started in interventional cardiology, which is the deployment of, used to be just angioplasty and then became stents and other devices to open up blocked arteries that feed the heart. But also I did a fellowship in electrophysiology. So I started my practice in both interventional and electrophysiology. And then in the late 90s, went into preventive cardiology and clinical lipidology, the study of cholesterol and triglyceride disorders and other lipid disorders and lipoprotein disorders. And that's what I've done since that time. I was the president of the American Society for Preventive Cardiology, so I've done that. I'm still very involved with that society, but spend most of my time in clinical research nowadays.
Okay, wonderful. So obviously I had to talk with you about this subject, cardiology and omega-3. Now, I would like to start off with a small, let's say, introduction. About 25 years ago, the first pharmaceutical drug based on omega-3 fatty acids, in that case it was EPA and DHA, was launched, and that was called Lovasa in the US, Omacor in Europe, and I think Lotriga at the moment in Japan. This drug went off patent, if I'm not mistaken, it was in 2014. And a couple of years later, a new pharma drug, well, I have to say, Lovasa was actually, the indication was to lower very high triglycerides, blood triglycerides. And a couple of years later, that must have been somewhere around 2018, a new drug was launched, also based on omega-3 fatty acids, but in this case, it was pure EPA, or 96% EPA. And this drug is called Vascepa, launched by a US company called Amarin. And it's also to lower the blood triglycerides, but also to lower the general cardiovascular risk, put it this way. They published a very interesting clinical trial at the end of 2019, which is called the Reducer trial. And actually, I would like to start off talking about this trial with you, Seth. Could you give us a short, let's say, summary of this trial and the outcome?
Yeah, so this was a trial that looked at people with either established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease or diabetes and other cardiovascular risks. A little over 8,000 people were randomized in this trial to receive either 4 grams of the icosapent ethyl, which is essentially the EPA, or placebo, and they were treated with standard of care on top of that, obviously, and they were followed over time. And it was a cardiovascular outcomes trial, so it was event-driven. A certain number of events had to accumulate for the trial to end, and the trial was quite remarkable in that there was a very significant reduction in multiple cardiovascular events, such as heart attack and stroke. And the trial was definitely significant, and it was the first such trial in utilizing omega-3s that had such a profound effect. Now, some of the interesting aspects of this trial were that triglyceride reduction, which was initially speculated to be the cause of a potential event reduction, had really no impact on it. So whether, regardless of how much triglycerides fell, the same event rate occurred. So this was not a triglyceride lowering study that caused the reduction of events. That was not it. Something else in EPA was causing this benefit. Now, although most of us think that this showed the value of an omega-3 fatty acid, there was a little bit of a sticking point with the mineral oil placebo. So the placebo is actually active in this case. Mineral oil and it can do certain things like potentially block some statin absorption, for example. And in fact, in the placebo arm, there was a little bump in LDL, bump in ApoB, not considered to be enough to cause such a profound reduction in event rates, though. Okay. But still, it is for some people a bone of contention here. The drug did, though, receive FDA approval, receive the endorsement of societies such as the American Diabetes Association. So it is an accepted therapeutic now that EPA reduces events in cardiovascular disease.
Okay, and I mean, I'm not a physician, but I could imagine as these patients were taking already statins, and on top of that, they got the EPA, let's say, treatment. I mean, that's for me even more astonishing, because the statins would have done already a large part of the job, right? But then you add EPA and it gets even better. I think it was a 30% almost difference, right?
Yeah, so 25 to 30%, and the number needed to treat, which is what we often look at in cardiology, was extraordinarily small. Less than 25 people would need to be treated in order to get these beneficial outcomes. So yeah, you're right. It was really profound. It was really profound. And most cardiologists in the United States, at least, have embraced those data and believe that EPA can be helpful. Now, this is on the backdrop, and I hope you don't mind if I start straying here, but this is on the backdrop of a whole bunch of studies looking at EPA and DHA over the years with some somewhat conflicting results, and meta-analyses oftentimes pulling these studies together and saying, aha, omega-3s don't work in cardiovascular disease. Right. And then all of a sudden we come out with this giant, amazing result, and we go, wow, look, it's, and then some people say, well, it's all about EPA. Well, if you look back carefully at these other studies, you'll see a number of problems. For one thing, I'm going to take us back to 2012 when a guy Rizos did a meta-analysis in JAMA and looked at all these different studies. That there were, I think, 8 large outcomes trials that had been done, or RCTs that had been done at that time. Took all these data, compiled it in a meta-analysis, and said, it doesn't work, right? If you really look at his study, though, it did work. Okay. So when we look at studies, we look at effectiveness as being to the left of the line of unity, effectiveness of a drug and placebo, right? Every one of these studies was left of the line of unity. It's just that when you put them all together, there was such a variation in dose, in duration, in relative distribution of EPA and DHA, in inclusion criteria, in time from initial event, in what the control was. So you just can't create a good meta-analysis that would address that question. But there are certainly enough studies out there that have demonstrated that it sure looks like EPA and DHA is beneficial in cardiovascular health. And from a plausibility standpoint, we always have to look at biological plausibility. There clearly are plausible explanations. So when we look at EPA and DHA, we see that they have significant impacts on various cardiovascular biologic processes such as thrombosis or anti-thrombosis, inflammation, anti-inflammation, blood pressure reducing, triglyceride reducing, for whatever that means. Right. So multiple different effects. The other thing, by the way, Mozafarian published this, and this is fascinating. Each of these effects, let's take anti-thrombosis, for example, right, versus blood pressure lowering. Each of these effects occurs at different doses of EPA and DHA. So you can't just conflate them all. You can't just put them all together and say, well, they're all the same. They all happen at the same time. They don't. Right. And they also all have different time courses. The blood pressure effects can take even up to years to maximize blood pressure lowering effects of EPA and DHA. Then there are also the considerations that EPA and DHA are not equivalent. They're both incredibly important. Our bodies need them both. Humans have more DHA than EPA, but they're not equivalent. So, for example, DHA seems to be more involved in nuclear transcription factors and more involved in as a membrane signaler than EPA. DHA maybe participates more in the electrophysiologic aspects of health. And what does it do? And this may be a little too much, but it lowers resting membrane potential, decreases dispersion of refractoriness, and makes the heart less vulnerable to a lethal arrhythmia, especially in the setting of an ischemic event, which is why in the GC study, perhaps sudden cardiac death was decreased because the dose was right for that. 750 or above, frankly, does the trick. And those people were less protected, and perhaps that administration of EPA and DHA, and probably DHA maybe a little more, had an antiarrhythmic effect. Anyway, there's so much going on here, right, that we can look at. There are a lot of opportunities to improve cardiovascular health.
Right. So I hear from this that your experience, or also what you read in the scientific literature, but probably also from your own experience, it is not only EPA which does the job. It's actually both of them, EPA and DHA. And I actually heard also from other sources that there are a number of studies out there in the area of DHA. But we'll put it this way, if the studies were published as DHA, they always had a little bit of EPA in them as well, right? So these studies also showed very cardioprotective effects. And some studies were even better than what we saw on the Vasipa side. So probably we cannot really say that it's only the EPA which does the job, right? It's probably a combination.
Yeah, I think it's very dangerous for us to say that it's all EPA. We know that, look, we talk about essential fatty acids. And when we talk about essential, that means that the body can't make them. We have to consume them. Right. The typical ones we look at are alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3, an 18-carbon omega-3, and and linoleic acid, an 18-carbon omega-6. And we talk about those as being essential. What we often don't talk about, and we should, is that downstream of those, the longer chain ones, EPA 20 carbon, DHA 22 carbon, are also essentially essential. Our right. bodies do not actively convert ALA to EPA and then DHA. We do it very, very poorly. We have to consume this. Right. And most of the world consumes far too little of EPA and DHA, okay? And our bodies have more DHA than EPA. So what that means is we have to consume it. And why is that? Because look at all the health aspects of EPA and DHA. There are substances, there are biologically active substances that are the products of EPA and DHA. The resolvins, the protectins from DHA, protectin D1, the most powerful neuroprotective substance ever discovered, comes from DHA. If we don't have that, we're in trouble. Okay, so for us to say, and this is the danger that I see from the REDUCE-IT trial, that EPA, it's all EPA, we're gonna, sacrifice DHA and all of the health benefits, cardiovascular and otherwise, if we do that. And it's dangerous. We can't do it. We need DHA, just like we need EPA, we need DHA.
Right. No, I agree. I fully agree. Now, according to your experience, what dose would you recommend? So how much EPA and DHA, it's called omega-3, would I need to get to see a protection on the cardiovascular side?
So when I've tested blood, which I do, to determine EPA and DHA levels or omega-3 scores, however you want to do it, we can discuss which is the best mousetrap for that. But I have personally found everyone's different, and I've been really, really surprised. So while some people, I would say rarely, but some people consume a ton of salmon and sardines and mackerel and herring and maybe don't need a supplement. Other people maybe need 3 grams a day, I've seen, or even up to 4 grams a day to get to a reasonable level. So everybody's different. I think, to make an overarching statement of a gram a day, I think is fair, for the average person, a gram a day of combined EPA and DHA. But I still think it's nice to have individual personalized evidence on the basis of blood testing to kind of tweak that gram and raise it as necessary.
I think that's absolutely correct, because it's not only the, let's say, omega-3 content in your blood or in your cell membranes, it's also the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, right? And if somebody has an extremely high omega-6 in his diet, he would need more omega-3 in order to balance this whole thing, right? Right. By the way, this morning, when I was thinking a little bit about this talk of ours, in the Vasepa trial, in the reducer trial, they had a dose of 4 grams per day of EPA. Now, I think it's important also for for people visiting our Omega-3 Awareness Week. 4 grams, that was 4 capsules of highly concentrated EPA. If you would take that as a normal fish oil capsule, 18, 12, so 8, that means you would have to take, I think, 20 capsules a day. I mean, just to give you a relation how much that actually is, right? It is a very high dose.
It is.
And I think for me, this was a very nice example to see the advantage of a high concentrated EPA or omega-3 in general, DHA as well. It is the convenience of not having to take so many normal fish oil capsule or the higher quantity. But this will, but basically that also improves, obviously, the compliance of the patient over time, right? But I think also what I seem to learn more and more over the last couple of years is that it doesn't matter for a pharma drug or for a supplement or practically for your daily food. The thing which is really important is not the concentration, it's the milligrams of EPA and DHA you ingest per day. So if you're capable of ingesting 1,000 milligrams, for instance, EPA plus DHA, by eating salmon and sardines, you're fine.
Right. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Agreed. In general, although, I have to tell you, I've seen some people who've done that and they need more. It's really interesting to me. Okay. I really have seen that. So, whether it's an absorption thing or whatever, but I have seen that. I would say one thing though, what you're saying about I would disagree slightly with one thing you said about it simply being a compliance thing or an ease. I think that, some of these fish oil products that are so poorly concentrated, the way I've always spoken to my patients about it is, what is that other oil? To me, it's junk. It's unnecessary, fat that is conveying no health benefit. And I don't know, exactly what it comprises. And I'd rather you not take it. So to me, it's like, no, take the most concentrated one, because you're taking exactly what you want to take, and you're not taking some other weird fat that you don't even know what it is, basically.
That is absolutely true. And you also have to take or be careful if you take these lower concentrated products, if they are really very well decontaminated, because that's another problem, right? As fish oils, many of them are sold at a very, very low price, but that is a product which also hasn't seen any treatment, any decontamination. So they are actually quite contaminated with PCBs, with dioxins, heavy metals, and stuff like that, right? So, I fully agree with that one.
And let me give you some kudos here and credit. You created a purification system that beats every other one in the world, as far as I can see. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. Now, is there a risk of taking too much omega-3 from your point of view?
Yeah, I think there is potentially. So as you start getting into the 3-4+ grams a day of combined EPA and DHA, or solely EPA, because we saw this in Reduce It, there is that tendency to start bleeding. We often minimize that and say, well, you're not going to bleed from EPA and DHA, although it does have some antithrombotic effects. And generally speaking, that's true. And certainly at the lower levels, that's true. At lower doses, that's true. But there was a statistically non-significant increase in serious bleeding in Reduce It, and that was at 4 grams. I think, and based on Mosafarian's data, the more you take in, the greater that risk of bleeding becomes. So I wouldn't be out there saying, hey, everybody take 10 grams a day of combined EPA and DHA. I think we would get into some bleeding issues at that point. So I would just be aware. And the reason I mention this is some of the people taking, very, very high doses of EPA and DHA, or just EPA alone, are also on antiplatelet therapy or anticoagulants. And so you just got to be cognizant of the possibility. I think at the 1 gram a day dose, I don't think it's a significant issue, or at least the data don't show that it's a significant issue.
Right. Actually, when was that? A couple of months ago, I spoke with Jon Dyerberg, I think it was, and he told me that, it's always a risk-benefit evaluation, right? Yes, there is a higher risk if you take higher doses. So the Inuits, for instance, where they started to look into the whole thing, they took 50 grams and more per day. And yes, there was a higher, let's say, risk of bleeding, but on the other side, they had a very much lower risk of, chronic inflammation, of cardiovascular disease, and so it's a balance, right? Which you have to go into.
And you're right. And everything in medicine is a balance, a risk-benefit analysis. Absolutely. And I've had patients, and I'm not saying they were right with this, but who felt that, who had cancer, bad cancer, and felt that taking high dose of omega-3s was beneficial, and kind of staved off. And again, making no claim here, I'm just recounting stories from my patients, and they would take these very high doses, understanding the potential risk for bleeding, because to them the benefit was there. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Now, from your practical experience, what were your main indications for when did you recommend your patients to take omega-3 supplementation or medication?
Always. So no, I really mean that, always, because we know from diet studies in the US that our consumption of DHA and EPA is abysmal, and we're just inadequately consuming the omega-3 fatty acids, and we can't make the omega-3 fatty acids, especially with the background of such high arachidonic acid and linoleic acid intake. So to me, essentially everybody, I would suggest a gram a day of combined EPA and DHA, unless there was some reason not to, which I can't really think of off the top of my head. But yeah, so I would pretty much say for everybody, which is probably not what you wanted to hear, but that's it wasn't nuanced.
No, and would you say you need that as of a special age? So is that something for? I mean, would young people need supplementation,
Yeah. So I'll give you the example of my daughter. I did some omega-3 levels on my daughter, and they were like almost non-detectable. Seriously, they were that bad. So, I put her on, actually I put her on 3 grams a day for a while, and then 2 grams a day after that.
Right.
And she is in her 20s. Right. No, I think it's across the board. I do.
I mean, that's actually one thing what I learned now during these interviews for the Omega-3 Awareness Week. The very low level of DHA found in young mothers during the pregnancy and breastfeeding, and the consequences that may have not only on early term birth, right, and all the consequences that has, but also on the cognitive development of the newborn. It is honestly frightening.
Terrifying.
You don't hear so much. You don't hear so much out there, but it is scary if you listen to that.
It is scary. And Susan Carlson did a ton of work, and others did a ton of work in that area.
Right.
But I think she, was really spearheaded that. And now DHA is recommended for, in pregnant mothers. But I think not enough personally. I don't know,
Yeah.
But I think we need to emphasize that, because cognitive development is clearly impaired in low DHA levels.
Right. No, I agree. And that's also something which I believe we need to make much more aware out there, because it was, it's not only, I spoke with Susan Carlson, but I also spoke with Michael Crawford, and he's also a gentleman working many years in the area of brain evolution and DHA. And what he told us was also really, awakening, in a way saying, well, look, if we don't find a solution for this, that the young people basically don't have enough DHA intake anymore, and we have this growing world population, at the same time we're overfishing our oceans, where the only source of the DHA and EPA comes from, right? That humanity is really running in the long term against war there, right? And it might be true if you come to think of it. I mean, if you look at the consequences, right?
It's a little terrifying.
Yeah, but we're drifting off a little bit.
Yeah.
So, anything else on the cardiovascular side, Seth, what you maybe would like to share with us regarding the EPA and the DHA? Is there anything we should talk about?
I guess I would just want to emphasize again that from a cardiovascular standpoint, I think there's enough evidence that EPA and DHA are cardiovascularly beneficial. And again, that's not to the exclusion of the rest of the body, because they're very important for many aspects of health and wellness, that I think it should be part of our armamentarium. And clearly there have been design flaws in studies, and clearly, it would be nice to have even greater evidence. The fact that major studies, frankly, outside of Reduce It, that really big, important studies, Reduce It and GC, weren't done. It's a consequence of funding, really, is all it is. And because you don't have a deep pharma pocket to fund these giant studies. But that doesn't negate the biologic plausibility, which we always have to look at, of EPA and DHA in the context of cardiovascular health. And I think we need to be sensible as physicians and look at these data and say, there's a lot here. What's the downside of, we talk about risk benefit. What's the downside of a gram a day of EPA and DHA? I think extraordinarily little. What's the upside? There's a potentially great upside. So to me, it's almost a no-brainer that we should be doing this across the board in cardiovascular medicine.
Right. Well, Seth, thanks so much for your time and for giving us this insight. It was great talking to you.
It's nice talking to you too, Peter.
And till the next time, okay?
Yes.
All
yes. Right. And keep up the great work.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Thank you very much.